there. Can you guys hear me okay? I can't hear you though. Let's see. Okay, for me. Just make sure that I've got the right. There. Preferences. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I can't hear you though. Let's see. Okay. Test. Make sure that I've got the right.
You can hear us right now, though?
There. I can hear you. You guys can't hear me? You guys hear me okay? Okay. Oh, I can't now you just cut out again. Let's see. Okay. Test. Can you guys hear me any better now? Make sure that I've got the right. I can hear you.
How about now?
You guys can't hear me? You guys hear me okay?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. I see your mouth moving. Oh, I can't now you just cut out again. Let's see.
I even unmuted my phone.
Okay. Test. Can you guys hear me any better now? Sure that I've got it right.
We just spent 30 minutes testing it. I can hear you.
I can hear you.
How about now?
You guys can't hear me? You guys hear me okay?
Can you hear me now? All right, great.
I see your mouth moving. Perfect. Now you just cut out for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for coming out. We still have the label up on the, we're not live on YouTube just yet. I just
figured
I'd give us a couple of seconds to get into the.
I can do a quick retweet.
Awesome.
Come on.
I'm ready.
Come on. We both tweet so much that try to find the last time we tweeted about this. Come on. Where are you at?
Oh, I might be able to find mine real quick.
Oh, you know what? Duh, here it is.
Awesome.
Got it. About to hop on.
Oh, I guess they have the audio live on YouTube, but no, they don't have our video. So they're hearing us talk, but there's probably nobody watching but my family just yet.
That's totally cool. Yeah, they can hear what really goes on behind the scenes with these.
We're going to do this live, but it'll live on our YouTube channel forever.
Exciting.
And as you know, I post a lot. So
yes, it's great.
Yeah.
I should be taking a page out of your playbook. I feel like I'm always struggling to keep up with my social media.
The worst thing is that it's, if you post, like everybody's like, oh, don't post more than once a day. But like you can't watch how many people have 600-700 people they're following, even more.
Yeah.
They can miss you if you don't post several times a day.
Yes.
Like if I'm at work, I can't look at it. So
right.
That whole 8 hours is not worth it for me to post during that time.
TweetDeck, where you can schedule tweets. But that's not going to help you for retweeting. But you can schedule a certain number of tweets per month, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're
there
live.
You go.
Welcome everybody to No Comics for Old Men. This is our first episode of Kickstarter creators. I have David Pepose. Might know him from Spencer and Locke, which I loved very much, or Going to the Chapel. And I'm very excited to hear about and then get, because I've already ordered it, The Oz. So before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I'm always interested in the creators and how they came to storytelling.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for having me and for the wonderful introduction. I'm David Pepose. I'm the Rigo Award nominated writer of Spencer and Locke, Spencer and Locke 2, the upcoming Spencer and Locke 3, Going to the Chapel, the upcoming Grand Theft Astro, and my new book on Kickstarter, The OZ, which is like what if Mad Max and the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, I've been kind of all over the place as far as the industry is concerned. Just like my books, I never approach my career straightforwardly either. It's less of a straight line and more of a zigzag. I got my start as an intern at DC Comics. I worked on Final Crisis, Batman R.I.P., Green Lantern, Secret Origin. I wound up working as a newspaper reporter after that. I covered crime and state politics. I also I also moonlit as a critic over at Newsarama. I wound up becoming the reviews editor for about a decade. Went on to work at CBS in New York. I worked in their publicity department. I worked with shows like The Big Bang Theory, every CSI and NCIS you can think of, every single acronym. Every show on their primetime network I worked on in some capacity. And then, I kind of tripped and fell into comics writing. I thought that I wanted to be an editor for a really long time. Then I realized being an editor is really hard. It's sort of, you have to play traffic cop and priest and therapist and bail bondsman all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I get to do that as an indie writer as well, but I also get to write the book, and it gets to be my idea. I kind of tripped and fell into it. I sort of started writing Spencer and Locke very piecemeal, and then I kind of shopped it around very piecemeal, and then suddenly a publisher said they wanted me to finish it, and I've been kind of doing that ever since.
That's fantastic. So, did you invested in storytelling from your youth? Because I've found that I've talked to a lot of people that it was early on that they found storytelling.
Yeah, I'm a third generation comics reader. My mother was a comics fan. My grandfather was a comics fan. The very first comic I ever got was Amazing Spider-Man number 346. It was the issue before Spider-Man and Venom had their fight on the island.
Yeah.
That Eric Larson Spidey really blew me away. And I had a few other Marvel books that I was given around the same time. And then my parents got me Infinity War number 2 with that awesome gatefold cover of all the heroes fighting each other. And it kind of blew my mind as a 5-year-old, realizing, oh, they all live in the same place. They all know each other. And that really kind of got me hooked. I'd come in waves, things like Death and Return of Superman or Nightfall, or Batman Gotham Knights. I always want to give Devin Grayson a shout out because she's a huge influence on me. Things like Crimson or Spawn or Civil War or Why the Last Man or Morrison's JLA, a New X-Men. I would keep coming back every time that there was something new that kind of really elevated the medium for me. I studied creative writing in college. I also studied journalism. I think there was part of me that, having grown up in the Midwest, I didn't know any professional writers, whether it was journalism or otherwise. And so there's part of me that said you should really have that stable position of journalism.
Yeah.
But like, if you got to learn how creative writing works, who knows, maybe you'll shoot for the moon.
Yeah, you're a lot of creators. I get that from what was my fallback job.
Yeah.
They all have this need to have, like, their family wants them to have some kind of security just in case the creativity doesn't work out.
See, what's funny for me is actually my family was the exact opposite. My mother's an economist, and clearly a terrible one, because she has said ever since I was a teenager that she always thought I could be a writer. I wrote a one-act play in high school that I kind of wrote on a lark, and people really seemed to respond to it. They really liked it. And so, but yeah, for the longest time, I was just like, I don't feel allowed to do this. Or if I did, it would not be as a writer. It would be sort of in a support position, either as an editor or a development executive or something with the stability of corporate with a little bit of that creative side. I just kind of came to learn that creative side, you don't get as much of it in corporate.
Right.
And now as a full-time writer, I just kind of get to live and die based on my ideas. And that's, at first it was a little scary, but now that I've sort of figured out the process and figured out the business side of it all, it's really, it's a calling. It's definitely, it certainly beats digging ditches. And it's not a job that I see myself leaving anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. I tell you, the books that you've written so far really struck me very well. I enjoyed them quite a bit. And I'm really excited for the OZ. I'll tell you why. So like the Arthurian tales and the Oz tale, all the retellings of those are some of my favorite, coming at it a different angle and a different view. And I love that you're passing the mantle on. That's one of my favorite things that I like. When everybody talks about comic books and like, oh, you're changing the character, he's becoming somebody different. I love to see the mantle passed on. I love it. So I really can't wait for this. Can you give us a little bit of a taste of what the Oz is going to be?
Sure. Well, so, in our story, we've reframed Dorothy Gale killing the Wicked Witch of the West as something like a botched regime change. And so when she clicks her heels together and goes back to Kansas, Dorothy is inadvertently left Oz in this power vacuum that leads to years of brutal civil war. And so the OZ picks up a generation later with Dorothy's granddaughter and namesake, who happens to be a disillusioned Iraq war veteran. And, Dorothy, she's come back from her time in Iraq and Afghanistan with some real scars and some real trauma and some real guilt. And so she's trying to kind of put the pieces of her life back together in small town Kansas when a tornado strikes and she finds herself trapped in the war-torn land of Oz. So this new Dorothy is really going to have to confront her past and her grandmother's legacy, not to mention navigate her grandmother's former friends, if she hopes to survive the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ.
That's great premise, man. I'm really digging it. Yeah, I can't wait. So let us know how much longer do you have on the Kickstarter right now?
Well, as of today, Monday the 31st, we are right at the halfway point for the campaign. So we've got I think our campaign ends in the wee hours of September 16th. So I always say, if you want to back us, do it the night of the 15th. Don't leave it to chance.
Don't wait.
Yeah. But
they should be doing it today is when they should be doing.
They should be doing it now.
Use your other screen. Go right. Absolutely. No, I'm contemplating getting another 10. That's how excited I am.
Oh, that'd be my pleasure. Yeah. It's just been, this has been a book that's been long in the works since the first volume of Spencer and Locke, to be honest. I think we're close to the 3-year anniversary of when I first came up with this title. So it goes to show you that in comics, success doesn't always come in weeks and months. Sometimes it's years. But yeah, for me, it's always about whether or not the original text supports my thesis, supports the new angle that I'm taking.
Right.
For those who've read my first book, Spencer and Locke, which is What If Calvin and Hobbes Grew Up in Sin City? The reason why I felt comfortable pursuing that track was because, you read the original Bill Watterson strips and Calvin has such a vivid image and personality for Hobbes. Yep. And, it made me think, oh, well, what if that wasn't a benign quirk? What if that was a symptom of a deeper pathology? And what could have caused that? And what was his home life like? And what would he look like as an adult? For the OZ, it's the same thing. Whether you've read the L. Frank Baum novels or if you've watched the Judy Garland film, which is kind of cultural osmosis at this point.
Sure.
Dorothy kills the Wicked Witch and splits, and the Wizard of Oz leaves. And, so you can already argue that like 3 of the major pillars of Oz's society have all collapsed at the same time. And she killed the Wicked Witch of the East at the beginning. So it's like Dorothy has really messed some stuff up. And yet those original stories, they try to wrap it up with a neat little bow. And that's not really how it works in the real world.
Right.
I grew up during the invasion of Iraq. I was in high school. And so I know that, that's kind of the ugly truth about these despots is it's not just they're ruling through fear and power, but it's also this control. They've got their tendrils and everything. And so when you uproot them, there's a lot of fallout from these good intentions. You start kind of uprooting a lot of important infrastructure and people start realizing, oh, we could fight for a piece of the pie.
Right.
And so it always kind of struck me that
exactly what happened in Iraq.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They got rid of the army. And so warlords took over and then we had to stay longer and longer.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just felt like this would not be a happy ending. This would look like Baghdad. This would look like Game of Thrones.
And I love how you made her an Iraq vet. So like she's going to be familiar with war.
Yes.
So she's not going to be, it's not a complete total fish out of water where you'd be kind of questioning if somebody got thrown into a war who didn't have, and then be successful. This is somebody who's been it, seen it,
and experienced and lived it. And that's been kind of the most fun elements of the book for me. When I was a newspaper reporter, amongst the beats that I covered crime and state politics, but I also covered the local mental health beat and the local military beat. And I think that really influenced not just the OZ, but the types of stories that I would go on to write. because it really struck me talking with these veterans who are coming back to an area that was fairly economically depressed, and didn't get the spotlight and didn't get the tax dollars. They people were talking about not just the hypervigilance and not just the intrusive thoughts that would kind of hit them without warning, sort of taking them back to these traumatizing periods in their lives, but it was the feeling of isolation and alienation, because they these people would just struggle to articulate how they were feeling and articulate what they saw back there. And if you haven't served, you know it's impossible to really know. So I feel like the stories that I gravitate to as a result are stories about trauma, seeing them as something that is kind of a universal concept to people, but also recognizing that they can be potentially cathartic. That if you're able to confront it and get through to the other side, it can give people hope. Um, I was really fortunate that while I have not served, I have friends who have, and so I have a friend from college who was a combat medic in Afghanistan, and I chatted with him a lot about kind of not just the individual lingo and making sure I was getting my language right, but also the big picture stuff. Like you said, we've been in the Middle East now for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why can't we extricate ourselves? How did this kind of spiral in the first place? And those conversations really helped me in terms of developing the arc of this story. Dorothy, as she says in the preview, they spent so much time preparing us for war, they didn't teach us how to maintain the peace.
Right.
And she's discovered that those two skill sets aren't always on the same page. They might not even be in the same book.
Yep.
And she's going to really grapple with what's the morality of wartime? How do you make a just decision when every choice you make can wind up with someone dead?
Yep.
Dorothy had to kind of deal with this stuff in real time when she was in Iraq and Afghanistan, but she was one of many boots on the ground. Now in the OZ, by virtue of who her grandmother was, everyone's looking to Dorothy for answers. Everybody wants her to lead, and it's an uncomfortable feeling for her, and it's going to lead her to really ask some bigger picture questions of, is there a way of extricating ourselves from this? How do you stop the cycle of violence? Is there a better way to do this? Or, are we stuck in the war as this never ending cycle because that's the only way it can play out?
Yeah. I say I'm a Desert Storm vet myself.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found hardest was to find my way back into society, and civilian life. And with mission becomes so much that when you don't have a mission, if you don't have your own mission or create a mission, you have a hard time, finding your way back in. And I spoke with Ryland Grant about his Aberrant, and I really enjoyed the way that he wrote soldiers in that book. And after hearing you explain these, I'm really excited. Even more excited for the book.
Well, thank you. I mean, for me, it's always been, how can we treat our characters with empathy and compassion and respect? I never want to treat trauma or PTSD or mental illness or anything as a punchline or as a punching bag. I feel like if we're able to treat our characters with dignity, we're really treating our readers with dignity, because there are so many people who have lived this. Not everybody's gone to the land of Oz, but like there are thousands of soldiers who have served and have sustained trauma, and do feel this feelings of isolation and regret and disillusionment. And so I find that if you treat your characters with a degree of compassion over it, readers I think they want to love these characters, and they see something in themselves reflected there. And so we're always just trying to sort of be as compassionate about it as we can be.
Yeah. Now, not to say that, we talked about all the doom and gloom, but if you haven't read Spencer and Locke or Going to the Chapel, there is a lot of great comedic relief, which, a lot of ways people deal with hardships and problems in their life is through humor.
Yeah.
Some of it dark, some of it not so dark, but you write some really good comedy stuff. I really like laugh out loud is not common reading comics. You feel, oh, that's funny, but you rarely laugh. And I found myself, especially Spencer and Locke, and definitely some of the old woman in
Go
I'm
to the
old,
chapel,
so I
yeah.
go names.
Grandma
Going to the
Harriet.
chapel, Grandma Harriet. Yeah, she had some great lines, which really made me laugh out loud. So where do
Um,
you get your the comedic relief? And it is you do treat it with reverence. The
yeah,
comedy is not like a punchline for
yeah.
the problem. It's
I get my sense of humor from my dad. He always, he's got a very sly sense of humor. It sneaks up on you. And he was always the funniest person I knew growing up as a kid. And so I think my family has always respected having a sense of humor. Sometimes as a defense mechanism, sometimes just to break up awkward silence, of which I get a lot. And I you know, for me as a writer, some of that is just some of that is driven in the directive of I want people to like this book. I want people to like these characters. Some of it is, if I get kind of stuck in a rut and I don't know what to do, humor is a great fallback. The OZ is it's funny because I feel like the humor in Spencer and Locke was, it was sort of a release valve. It was such a dark and gritty world
yeah,
that, if we didn't crack a joke every once in a while, like people would be depressed reading this book. And I feel like with the OZ, a lot of the humor comes from just like the absurdity of the location. It's almost sort of hitting it from the opposite angle, where Dorothy's serious. This is her fighting for her life, but like there are some things in the book that you just like. Of course, you're like, oh well, I don't think it's not too much of a spoiler. We have it on one of our pages, but like she punches a Munchkin guard like right through a door. And that's kind of funny, like in a way, just seeing this Munchkin just get like absolutely wrecked.
yeah,
And so yeah, I mean it's in certain ways, we've got a little bit of that Mad Max quality and a little bit of that Star Wars quality, but I
yeah.
think by virtue of taking the land of Oz, which I think the pop culture consciousness sees as so squeaky clean and innocent,
Sure.
and giving the land of Oz teeth. I think there are going to be definitely some moments that are going to make some readers kind of chuckle in spite of themselves.
That's going to be great. And I'll tell you, I also saw some of the art from the Flying Monkeys. Look rock star, man. They look really good. Who is the artist on your book?
Yeah, so I'm working with Ruben Rojas. This is kind of his big American debut. He's terrific. There are not enough good things I can say about Ruben Rojas. He's got a style that's kind of like a mix between Dan Mora and Sean Murphy. Very kinetic action sequences, but he's able to kind of turn on a dime for these really moody, emotional beats. But I think Ruben's greatest strength, and one that has made the OZ as powerful as it is he's one of the most gifted designers I've ever met. He does such a great job in fleshing out the land of Oz and all its various locations and the characters that reside within. I couldn't be happier with the way that Ruben has realized these characters that kind of were just paying rent in my mind. I always work with artists and I do pitch pages and a cover just to make sure it's a good fit, make sure that we have something ready for a publisher if we decide to pitch it there. And Ruben, when he did his first cover with Dorothy and the Tin Soldier, I was so blown away that I immediately told him, keep working. I promise you, come hell or high water, I will get this book made. That's when you work with teams like that, or people like Jorge Santiago Jr. and Jason Smith on Spencer and Locke, or Gavin Guidry and Liz Kramer on Going to the Chapel. For me, I make those promises because I've said, even if I have to, go into debt and print it, out of my basement, I refuse to live in a world where nobody knows who Ruben Rojas is. And I think after the last 2 weeks, that started to change a bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed the art. And I talk to a lot of creators and some that do the writing and the art themselves.
Sure.
And it's great where, because I believe that the art tells part of the story for comics for me. And you can really tell a comic that the writer wrote one story and the artist drew a different one.
Right. Right.
They just don't connect and they don't hit, but it looks like this is hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate, between Ruben and our colorist Whitney Kogar and our letterer DC Hopkins, we're all in pretty close communication with each other. I'm playing point man between all the various conduits, and we've gotten ourselves in a nice feedback loop where we're all inspiring each other to bring our A game. Ruben's inks were so strong that I shotgunned through 6 standard sized issues in kind of one go. I don't usually do that, but I believe in Ruben. Meanwhile, Whitney Kogar saw Ruben's inks and she was like, oh, I'm going to knock this thing out of the park. Ruben got so excited reading my scripts and seeing Whitney's colors that he has just been like bringing his absolute A game. And then DC Hopkins, he's our safety rail. They say there's the movie you shoot, the movie you write, the movie you shoot, the movie you edit. It's the comic you write, the comic that's drawn, and the comic that's lettered. So DC is kind of the guy that makes sure that we stick the landing, that every bit of the story gets communicated in the way that it needs to without interfering with Ruben's art. And so he's really kind of the ultimate team player. He's so deliberate and considerate with his contributions. And he has yet to get mad at me when I see a word balloon that suddenly looks like a giant block of text. And I'm like, oh, I got to cut half that line. I'm sorry, buddy. He's a real gem. And I think, having this team together, we really just egg each other on. And
that's great.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier with the OZ team. And, the thing that I've said is people have asked already, will you do sequels? And at the time I wrote this as kind of a standalone series, but I always have ideas in my back pocket. But it's all contingent on whether, what the demand is by the end of our Kickstarter campaigns, because this is the first of 3. And what everybody else's bandwidth is. I will never do an OZ story without Ruben Rojas and Whitney Kogar. It just will not happen. So yeah, but that's how much I believe in this team. And, I distinctly think, the writing's not bad, but like I think visually this book could go toe to toe with anything in the direct market. That's
great. So let's talk a little bit about that. This is your first Kickstarter, but you were at it, and you're in one of the I would like to say a hot indie writer.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed your stuff, and it has sold well in a small shop. I'm a small shop in upstate New York.
Hey, I'll take it.
So yeah, this is your first Kickstarter, and you were successful. What, day 2? Day 1?
No, it's successful in 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Wild.
Right. So you think that? So your plan now is to move to 3. There's going to be 3 Kickstarters.
3 Kickstarters for the OZ. So each of them will be for double-sized issues. The way I had written the OZ, it broke nicely across a 3-act structure, and I felt like this way, we could add more bang for our readers' bucks, especially the early adopters like you. Also that way I wouldn't give myself a nervous breakdown trying to do 6 of these, because Kickstarter hits you different. It's less like doing a traditional publicity campaign for a book, and it's more like doing 10 conventions back to back.
Right.
I'm going to sleep for a week when this is done. But I feel like the reason why Kickstarter was kind of so attractive to me, I had been thinking about Kickstarter for a long time, really the better part of a year. And it's because there are some people that buy their books primarily through the direct market, which they have been so wonderful in supporting us for Spencer and Locke and going to the chapel. And there's some people who buy their books primarily on Amazon or Comixology. And then there's some people who buy them primarily at cons, which is where I traditionally had a lot of success, but now cons aren't a thing. And the thing that really kind of tipped me over the net, I'm friends with Charlie Stickney, co-publisher over at Scout, the writer and creator of White Ash, really kind of the original comics Kickstarter success story. And he told me, there's a whole demographic of people that only buy their books on Kickstarter. And for me, and you and I might have had this conversation at New York Comic Con last year. For me, my directive is always, how can we invite more people to the table? How can we build that wider consensus? And I realized there was a whole demographic I had done no outreach to. And I think part of the success of this campaign is we've been able to bring the direct market and the Kickstarter crowd together and kind of invited them to break bread. And that's something that I think is only a value add down the road, by having, right now we're approaching 900 readers. I'm hoping by the time our Kickstarter ends, we'll have broken 1,000. By doing that, that means that there's 1,000 people who will presumably stick around for the rest of the OZ. They'll want to see where it heads, and will hopefully stick around for other projects down the road. I just posted this on Twitter actually just before our chat, but I love the comics industry. I grew up in it, but I feel like sometimes we're a little too insular for our own good. Sometimes we circle the wagons. And for me, I don't want to preach to the choir anymore. I want converts. And
Right.
I think that's always something that I think really influences and informs not just the types of stories I tell, but the types of characters that I work with as well.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, totally no worries. It was I saw the camera like doing like a stunt flip, and I was kind of like, oh wow, all right. We're getting
That
some
was me
Michael
actually
Bay
doing the
action.
flip. Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I think that the market and the business is changing. Like it is always, like everybody's saying that comics are dying. Comics have always changed.
Yeah.
When Marvel came along in the 60s, when DC was, running the show, they changed. Stan Lee and Kirby changed the world, right? And then Image, when they broke out in the 90s, they changed the world. It keeps happening. And it's going to continue to happen. And once we can find a model where the stores and the creators can get together and get it done, I mean, I think that's where we'll be at.
It reminds me of a conversation that I used to have at CBS, where, people used to freak out about cable or HBO or streaming or, or video on demand. And the thing is will evolve. We have to. And, hopefully everybody will be as forward thinking as you. Because like, I know you have a digital presence. The fact that we're doing this conversation at all puts you ahead of 99% of people on the ground right now. And I think that's something that everyone in the comics industry has to start pivoting towards is, I've been thinking about this since the pandemic first started, is how do I enhance my social media? How do I bring people to my newsletter? How can I have a digital platform like Kickstarter? I'm building an author website right now. So it's I think digital is certainly something that we're all going to have to shore up. But I think, even things like Donny Cates writing a comics tie-in for Fortnite.
Yep.
I've seen people complain at him, and it's like, why would you complain about outreaching 350 million players? Even if we got 1 million of those players to start reading
it's
comics.
The whole, hey, that indie band that I love, now everybody loves, and now I hate them.
Yeah, they think that somebody sold out, and I think at this point, outreach is the watchword. Accessibility is the watchword.
They should be outreaching all the readers, anybody who reads a comic out there. If you love comics and want them to continue, you should be tell a friend. Tell them how much you enjoy reading a comic. The stories that they tell are not like what they think. And it's the whole gambit. There's a few comics that I don't like, but I've never tell anybody, hey, don't read that. I always say it's not my flavor, right? It's not what I like to read. I'm more indie centric, but I understand if people like they want to read the Batman, they want to read, the Avengers or Venom or Thor right now is super hot.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, and Donny Cates is a great storyteller. So I have been reading some of that too, but I always felt that the better storytelling was in independence.
Sure. It's the pendulum, is that indies are where all the innovation comes from, and the licensed books are where all the spotlight comes from.
Yeah.
And so you see, and this has been, sometimes the pendulum swings in different directions. I mean, there was once upon a time where you got your start at the big two, and then you got so big that you did your own thing. Now it's, you sort of work your way up the indies, and then you can break into the big two. And once you've hit that critical mass, then you go back to the indies with that following that you've built. And, I don't know when, that things might change, things change year to year. I mean, the fact that, Scout Comics, for example, has become a real success story. It's something that they've worked really hard to achieve. So I feel like, the industry comes in waves.
Yeah, they're doing their own distribution now.
Yeah,
I just signed up to buy my books direct, buy Scout books direct from them. So
it's pretty impressive what they've the strides that they've managed to take just in the last year. But I think it's been very instructive watching them, or SourcePoint, or TKO, or Vault, or Boom. I think all of them in their own ways have been real leaders for an industry during the pandemic, when some of our larger constituents have kind of circled the wagons.
Right.
It's hard to kind of build a consensus without some of those bigger players.
Well, when you're in a battleship, it's hard to turn quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. 18-wheelers aren't known for turning on a dime.
Right. So I think that's their biggest problem. There's too much bureaucracy. There's too many people in the way to move it quickly, like the independents can. The independents just, the guy wakes up in the morning and go, we're going to do this, and they're doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's Kickstarter to a T. The fact that, like, for me, my only limitations are what will not delay the book, what can I fit in my existing shipping infrastructure, and what can I distribute digitally. But beyond that, it's kind of the sky's the limit. Right. The fact that we made a theme song for the OC.
Yeah,
we did it in a week. Most publishers, even the scrappiest of indies, would not be able to do that. But by virtue of just kind of being like, well, we're a success story and we want to keep adding value, this is the way to do it. And so yeah, it's been really it's been a fun challenge kind of navigating that, because Kickstarter is a very different planet than the direct market. It's got its own laws of physics that
and when you hit that fulfillment, that's the other thing, is that's big on Kickstarter, is if you get known that that fulfillment turns around quickly, you have a lot of buy-in right away on your next Kickstarter, because people know they're going to get their book. Like, some guys have just never, Rob Liefeld, produced his book that he collected his money on. So
I can tell you the book is done. All 44 pages of story are done. The covers are done. I am literally just waiting on colors for a couple of pinups, and then I get to send proofs to the printer. So yeah.
Oh wow, you're way ahead of most have an idea. So
no, I mean, part of the reason I felt comfortable doing this on Kickstarter was we already had 44 pages of story drawn. And so I was kind of like, all right, I feel good about this. It was a matter of just getting our variant covers in a row, and then when we kind of blew through any expectations, it was sort of like, oh, okay, we probably should add pinups to this. I did not have enough pinups prepared. So getting those ready. But I think exactly what you said. It's all about trust. Readers feel invested in this project because they feel that they brought it to life. And so for me, I never want to abuse that trust. And so we gave ourselves, I think what I consider to be a fairly comfortable cushion. I don't foresee any delays in the process. And if there are, it'll be related to the post office. It won't be on us not having the book ready. And thankfully, having digital distribution, we will still, even if there's an issue with the post office, everyone will be getting their digital copies of the book on time. We try to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Sure. And I think we're doing pretty well right now as far as staying ahead of schedule for this book.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about the post office. I know everybody's worried about the post office, but because of COVID, we hadn't done a lot of business online because we wanted to be a destination where you come and find stuff.
Sure.
But because of COVID, we went a lot online, and I've been doing a lot of sales online. I have not had one shipping complaint, and I only use the United States Postal Service.
That's great. That's
one late shipment. They're out there. They're still out there doing their job, whatever winky, hinky stuff is going on in the background to try to stop it, they're all still doing their job. So
That's great.
yeah, so that's one thing less you can put on your worry mind there.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to make sure, we're giving readers the most bang for their buck. And that's why, that's been a lot of our stretch goals and our enhancements. We're doing 44 pages of story. Every tier gets the first issue PDF of Spencer and Locke #1 and going to the chapel #1. So, you throw in.
That was genius. That was genius. I mean, it's a great read. So everybody's going to enjoy it, but it also kind of puts all your work out there for people to then, now they're going to be out there looking for the hard copy.
Exactly. And that way, if people either, want to visit their local comic shops or they want to order directly from me, we have the rest of the series so people can get that. But also as a way of sort of maximizing bang for your buck. You put in $10, you immediately are getting 88 pages of story from just me. We also have our digital comics extravaganza. So we're going to have PDFs from a dozen creators, people like Justin Jordan, Rylan Grant, Frank Gogol, Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
7-year-old me would have passed out knowing that this was in his future. The fact that we have, all these different creators for $10 at minimum, you're getting hundreds of pages of story. Sure. And that's not even if you start saying, oh, well, I'd like a hard copy of this, or I'd like all the variant covers of this. So yeah, we tried to really make sure that people felt like they were getting their money's worth with this book. And I think, seeing this book just by itself, people are going to think it was money well spent. But seeing kind of all the different extras and the behind the scenes materials and the digital extras and things like our prints and our stickers, I think that will go a long way towards people feeling like they backed the right horse.
Yeah. Well, David, I've kept you way more than half an hour.
No, please. Thank you for having me.
This was really enjoyed our time together. You're such a interesting creator.
Thank you.
One of the top, most 100 top influential people in comics. That was a pretty cool thing. Did you know you were getting that?
No, not at all. That was extremely generous. We had gotten some bad personal news about our dog the day before. I was not in a great place, and then this was like such amazingly good news that it actually kind of like wiped the slate clean for me. And it was such a generous honor from Rich Johnston and Hannibal Taboo over at Bleeding Cool. Huge honor. I couldn't be more grateful for it. And thankfully I was number 100 in the 100 list, so I still have the proportionate speed and strength of a normal human being. But I promise still to use that power as responsibly as I can.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. We're going to try to put a link in the description to.
Sure.
It's already there for the OZ. And you have a website?
Yeah, well, so you can visit me on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. You can follow David Pepose Comics on Facebook. So you can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews. And you can follow the OZ Comic on Facebook, Twitter,